That is light.
Huh?
There's one.
One's up, two's up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I am calling the State Board of Elections meeting to order. There are 5 members present, and I'm declaring that a quorum is present for the meeting. At this time, the next item on the agenda is ratification of minutes from the December 12, 2019 meeting. The minutes have been distributed electronically to all board members. No board members have indicated any requirement for edits. May I have a motion to approve the minutes at this time?
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passed. One thing, the State Board of Elections is live streamed and therefore is now under both audio and video transmission. The audio is extremely sensitive, and any talking within the room is going to be picked up by one or more of the audio systems and recorded and distributed worldwide via the World Wide Web. So, please don't talk. If you do need to talk, go outside the room, preferably the hallway or well off to the sides. And with that warning, are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. There is actually one subtraction. Ms. Garland is withdrawing her request to speak to the board today. So, the addition actually would be Ms. Boucher.
Yes, sir.
Right. Ms. Boucher of Montgomery County Government, and she's been approved to speak to the board today. Are there any other additions or subtractions from the agenda?
I think we have. It's Allison McLaughlin, the Deputy Director for the Montgomery County Board.
She's on the list.
Sorry.
She's already on the list. Ms. Boucher was not on the
Got it.
list.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's the only reason I didn't mention it. Any additions or subtractions otherwise from the agenda? No? Hearing none. Next item, Administrator's Report.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year. So we have 2 new State Board of Elections employees. Nico Casa. I'm not going to try to pronounce. I'm sure that Bill can pronounce his first name better than I can. So Nico started last week with us as a contract investigator in the Candidacy and Campaign Finance Division. He'll be working with the Audit and Enforcement Unit staff, and he joined us after 5 years of working as a financial analyst. He has experience in accounting and auditing and examining financial records, which we think will be a great resource to us, especially going into handling a whole bunch of election year complaints. But I don't think he's here. No. Do you want to introduce your new? Go right ahead.
All right, so in December, Tavona McIntyre also joined SBE as an administrative assistant. She's supporting the election temporary staff and contract. She has a lot of experience with administrative assistant duties. She'll primarily be overseeing the electronic timekeeping system for those for that personnel, and also helping with budget-related tasks pertaining to that contract.
So election directors meeting we held, we had one in December and we had one this morning. A summary of last month should be in your folder, and we'll provide you with the summary of today's meeting when we get it done in your February meeting. So got that. And then the next section is just sort of our preparations for the special election for the 7th Congressional District. So I'll turn it over to Aaron to start, and then there's a voter registration addition in there too.
Hi, good afternoon. On December 20th, we transmitted emails and C-Change, who is our vendor for printing, inserting, and mailing absentee ballot packets, mailed ballots to requesting military and overseas voters. We're happy to report that we complied with the deadline established in the Federal Military and Overseas Voters Empowerment Act, which is also known as the MOVE Act. And in response to a request from the U.S. Department of Justice, we supplied all of our data to that compliance. On December 26th, the first round of absentee ballots were transmitted to requesting domestic civilian voters. This included ballots mailed by C-Change and emails with ballot login information sent by SBE. As of January 13th, which was this past Monday, SBE, we sent over 136 emails with information about how to access SBE's online ballot delivery system. Over 60 voters so far have successfully logged into their accounts, and 52 voters printed their ballots. Sea Change has mailed 399 absentee ballot packets.
I'm sorry, the call center. The call center is supporting SBE and Baltimore City and Baltimore County through this special election. We've supplied them with a who to call list at SBE in case transfers to us need to, if they can't answer questions, we've supplied them with a Q&A list, FAQs I should say, commonly asked questions, and all seems to be going well. The voter registration deadline being yesterday, Tuesday. And they're pulling the database for the precinct register this evening after 6 o'clock. Things are going well.
So under election reform and management, my deputy, Courtney Bryant, and I will be evaluating election judge training classes at 6 different local boards prior to the 2020 presidential primary / special general election in April. All local boards are evaluated within a 4-year election cycle, and this is part of the requirement of our post-election comprehensive audit. And then after we evaluate the training class, a report is issued to the director and deputy director, like I said, within 1 week after evaluating that training class. And if there's any immediate actions that need to be taken to correct any kind of training issues, we notify the local board immediately if anything is needed.
Question. So what this is saying is when you say 6 local boards, effectively you're saying 6 counties for the city. That's basically. Okay. Has there been any discussion about increasing the number of evaluations in this particular election cycle?
No, I mean, it's a capacity issue on us, but, I mean, we can have the conversation certainly and see
Okay.
what we can increase to, but.
Okay, I would like to have a conversation about that.
Are any of these in Southern Maryland?
I don't know yet.
If they are, could you notify me? I'd like to attend if possible.
Sure, absolutely. Southern Maryland meaning
Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's, Prince George, Santa Rosa.
Okay, sure.
I don't want to travel too far.
Okay. Okay.
So just, Malcolm, for you, so there are trainings going on in every county.
Right, I'm going to try to attend those.
You had the warrants to
I'm
go.
going to contact them.
Got it.
And you could attend any one.
I know. They may not, but I do.
Is there a methodology behind the choices, or is it random?
No, there's a little bit of methodology. We look at so this year we'll start all the 24 local boards again. So we've already completed a 4-year election cycle where all 24 local boards have been evaluated. So I'll probably look at who we evaluated in 2016 and probably go back there. So, yeah.
Or if there's any that have had issues.
Yep, I will go there as well. You're welcome.
Thank you. Voter registration?
Go. So, there is a new contract for the database support, software development, and bringing on all new, bringing them under a new staffing contract. So it was approved at the Board of Public Works last week. The winning bid, one of the winning bids, Notorian, is working very diligently to bring on all the resources needed from the previous contractor. So we have some good transition there. And I think we're very hopeful this is going to be a great contract moving forward. It's looking good so far. The numbers from MBA have been provided to you, as well as any of the non-citizen removals, discoveries, that type of thing. And one of the main efforts going on is the new party petition called the Working Class Party. The signatures have been sent out to some of the local boards, but the staff here, in support of the Congressional District 7 election, are performing the verification of the petitions for Howard, Baltimore City, and Baltimore County. So.
Candidacy and campaign finance division.
Do you want me to do it? Or do you want? Okay. So far we have 272 candidates that have filed for the 2020 election cycle. Under Maryland law, the Secretary of State actually is required to name the presidential candidates to Maryland's primary election ballot. And so in your folder, you have a transmission from Secretary Wubben-Smith listing the presidential candidates in the Democratic Party and the presidential candidates in the Republican Party that will be on the ballot. If you look down the list, you'll see that some of the named individuals have at least publicly withdrawn or suspended their campaigns, and they have until February 3rd to submit a written withdrawal form or notarized statement to remove their name. February 3rd is our candidate withdrawal deadline, and so some of them might not appear on the ballot even though they were certified by the Secretary of State. So there are 15 Democratic and 2 Republican named candidates on that document. So in the administrative report at the bottom of page 2 and to page 3 are 2 enforcement actions by the division and the fines that were assessed.
Project manager.
Good afternoon. Inventory management, the SBE continue to dispose of equipment and supplies via the state disposal process that includes the auctioning, recycling, transferring, or trashing of the items. The PMO is finishing up testing in preparation for the upgrade to the production inventory system this week. Also on procurements, we will continue to work on several procurements. The election project and other resource support task order request for proposal to retort was approved by the Board of Public Works, as was mentioned a little bit earlier. This contract provides database support and software development, not only for MD voters and project support, to prepare for the implementation of the electronic polls and other projects and tasks. Efforts are now underway to bring on the contract resources. The Maryland Correctional Enterprises has started to deliver the local boards the 219 additional black precinct cards. The deliveries are expected to continue through mid-February. The additional precinct voting booths have started to arrive and will be delivered to the local boards once this vendor performs a quality control check on some of the units. The boards are scheduled to be delivered. The booths are scheduled to be delivered through mid-February. Just a note that underground construction work has started that will provide internet and network connectivity to the SBE Central Warehouse facility in Glenbury. Myself, along with Linda Lamone, David Walker, Gary Hastings, and Paula Paschel, attended the Belfair Center's Battle Staff Boot Camp. In addition to representatives from SBE and the various local boards, there were representatives from a number of other states. The purpose of this all-day event was to provide participants insight into approaches that can be taken to enhance the election operation support efforts during the election period, with a focus on effective preparation, communication, incident tracking, and team organization. SBE is looking to try some of these suggestions during the upcoming special primary, and then additional suggestions for the presidential primary in April.
Just a quick question, Keith. I notice every month we have the SBE continues to dispose of equipment. Is that just something that is kind of always going on?
Yes, sir.
So there wasn't like, because we added the space on, it wasn't like a higher amount that we were dealing with, and then it goes away. It's this ongoing thing.
Yes, sir. Well, continually we have equipment, supplies that are coming into the warehouse that have to be disposed of. You know, have to go through the process. So
Okay.
it's an ongoing process.
Thanks.
Voting system.
Good afternoon again. So starting with the electronic poll book, the final build of Easy Roster, which is the poll book software, has been provided from SBE to the 24 local boards of elections to complete software upgrades in preparation for the 2020 elections. SBE has requested that all local boards complete poll book upgrades by the end of this month, January 2020. We're in the process of getting those confirmations that the local boards have in fact completed that process. SBE continues to work on implementing a wide area network on Election Day in 6 local jurisdictions. Third connectivity test was conducted this past Tuesday, January 14. We had 21 local boards participate, and the test was successful. To provide a little more detail, we actually had over 100,000 transactions posted to the server during that test, and everything was successful.
How long of a period was the test?
The test was a 6-hour period, broken down into 3 different phases. So the other thing we wanted to brief the board on, with the network configuration established, SBE is planning to utilize this wide area network for the upcoming special primary election on February 4th. And we also are looking to roll out this new network devices, a new network for early voting to replace the existing equipment, which is more so that it's end of life anyway. For the voting system, SBE continues to work with the SNS to offer training to the local boards on the voting system, dealing with databases, voting equipment, and associated applications. Training began in January, and to date, over 65 training requests have been received, and 32 trainings have been delivered.
Legislation.
So let me just make a note that you'll see many campaign finance-related pieces of legislation in here. If you have questions, please email them to me, and I'll be happy to get Jared to answer them later. Aside that, Jared and Mary are both attending legislative hearings in the House this afternoon, so that's why we're stepping in on their behalf. There are a list of some of the highlighted pieces of legislation that we're tracking right now. I'll be happy to answer what I can. The one certainly is they'd like to refer to absentee voting as mail-in voting. It looks like we will have a referendum on the ballot for sports betting. There is a push to have polling places at continuing care, retirement communities. They are attempting to have absentee or mail-in voting ballots postage prepaid. And you might ask why we're following a scanning or swiping identification cards and driver's license bill, but that is how we, for same-day registration, capture the information of the voter. So we're watching that. And they also, any future voting systems that the state board might certify must be capable of doing ranked choice voting.
Any questions about that?
Questions? Well,
Yeah, I'm sorry. On that scanning prohibition, saying here there are exceptions within legislation,
yeah,
but there isn't an exception for.
I'm not sure. We're still digging into that.
But if there was an exception for elections, it'd be fine.
Okay, no worries. Correct. But it's not a specific for elections. So I think we might need a tweak in that legislation, if nothing else.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is the Assistant Attorney General's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continuing with past practice, I will give updates on the cases for which there is additional changed information from the last time we met. Beginning with number one, this is Fusaro versus Davitt. This is the first of now 3 voter list cases that we have on the docket. Mr. Fusaro is seeking a list so that he can communicate with Maryland voters about his what he believes was his unfair prosecution by the then state prosecutor, Emmett Davitt. We entered a brief period of discovery in the fall, and we are briefing cross-summary judgment motions right now. Our opposition to their summary judgment motions due next Friday, and briefing should be complete on that by the middle of February, or the end of February. The next matter for which an update is to be provided is the Washington Post case. I don't remember if we discussed this at our last meeting, but the Court of Appeals issued a ruling in December affirming the injunction that was entered against the state of Maryland to enforce this online electioneering Transparency Act against the Washington Post and other media, principally newspaper entities in the region. We are in discussions with the plaintiffs about resolving that case right now that it is back from appeal. The next matter for update is Fucon versus Maryland State Board of Elections. On December 30th, 2019, we had arguments in the in-bank appeal taken by Ms. Fucon. Ms. Fucon was the Republican candidate for Republican nominee for controller in the 2018 election. She is challenging the state board's certification that Mr. Francho, the winner of that election, had filed all of his campaign finance reports. She claims that there were irregularities in the campaign finance reports that amounted to a non-filing on Mr. Francho's part. She further claims that because the state board erred in certifying the results, that she is entitled to be certified as the controller as a result of the fact that Mr. Francho was ineligible because of his failure to file. We prevailed on a motion to dismiss. She took an appeal to the in-bank panel of circuit court judges here in Anne Arundel County. That argument took place on December 30th, and we expect a decision within the next several weeks or months on that. Next matter is the National Federation of the Blind et al. Versus Lamone et al. This has to do with a challenge to the manner in which the state board has directed that voters use the ballot marking devices at polling places on election day. The National Federation of the Blind is seeking relief in the form of an order that would require all voters to be directed to use the ballot marking device in the first instance. A preliminary injunction motion was filed by the plaintiffs in, I believe it was October or late September. A period of brief discovery was had in November and December, and briefing is now complete on their motion for preliminary injunction. The motion will be heard tomorrow in federal court in Baltimore, and we also had 2 unsuccessful settlement conferences earlier this week and last week before a magistrate judge in in federal court in Baltimore, at which Nikki and Chairman Kogan and the state administrator, Ms. Lamone, were present for all or part of, but we weren't able to resolve the case at that settlement conference. Next matter is Hughes versus Alabama Secretary of State et al. This is a suit by a individual who seeks to be placed on the ballot as a nominee, as a candidate for the Democratic Party nomination for president. He claims that the various laws in the various states are unconstitutional in prescribing different processes for obtaining access to the ballot as a candidate. His theory is that because he filed with the FEC as a candidate for president, or for the nomination to be president for the Democratic Party, that should be enough to get him on the ballot of every state. He has sued not all 50 states, but the substantial majority of them in New York federal court. We have filed, along with several other of the defendants, a motion to dismiss, asserting a number of grounds for which his complaint is not well pled, including lack of personal jurisdiction over, this case was brought against the Secretary of State, so lack of personal jurisdiction in New York over a Maryland official, and failure to state a claim. The plaintiff's response is due later this month, or an amended complaint, if he instead chooses to amend the complaint, is due later this month, and I will update you all on the progress of that. Chong Soo Yi versus Hogan is two cases that now largely assert similar relief. One appears to be proceeding on state law theories, and one appears to be proceeding on constitutional theories. Mr. Yi is challenging the use of religious facilities as polling places as unconstitutional and or not supported by state law. He's appears to be challenging the use of scanning machines to scan ballots at polling places. He alleges this is not authorized by Congress for federal elections and is unconstitutional. And he's challenging the identification of candidates' party affiliations on the general election ballot as also not permitted by the Constitution and not authorized under state law. He's proceeding pro se. We have filed motions to dismiss in both cases. He has appealed a denial of a motion for default judgment in both cases. And so the cases are also pending in the Court of Special Appeals, but he's also continuing to litigate them in the Circuit Court for Montgomery County. We received trial dates in both cases for mid to late May. Our hope is that this is resolved before we go to trial on it, but we will see what happens. And finally, Public Interest Legal Foundation versus Lamone. This is a new matter, the third of the three voterless cases. They have brought suit, a short complaint and a simultaneous motion for summary judgment, piggybacking on the Judicial Watch case, which is the second of the three voterless cases. The Judicial Watch case is a case in which we largely lost a motion for summary judgment in the fall. There's one issue that the court is still resolving. That issue is whether the voter list that we've been ordered to provide to Judicial Watch should include the dates of birth of voters. That is something that the State Board removed in the course of the last several years, removed as an available data point for people who purchase voter lists from the state of Maryland. While that issue continues to be open, when that gets resolved, there will be a decision point for the State Board about whether to appeal or not, for the Attorney General's office as well. We think a decision to appeal that case the result of that appeal will control the Public Interest Legal Foundation case. The two cases proceed on the exact same theory. We're in discussions with the plaintiffs about how to make this litigation efficient and tie it to the Judicial Watch case in some way so that we don't have to duplicate efforts and they don't have to do work that, frankly, is probably unnecessary at this point. So that's where we are. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Hearing none. Next item on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Assistant Attorney General. Approval of late fee waivers.
Good afternoon. Enclosed are the waivers requests which were submitted by the Campaign Finance Committee that have been assessed late filing fees. The attached waiver request information page contains an overview of each committee as well as the administrator's recommendation to board approval on granting a waiver request.
Is there any questions, are there any questions by any member of the board? I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
On Gibbs, committee to elect Makita Gibbs, we got fines of $1,760. Reason for waiver, for the request for waiver. I'm requesting a waiver for the audit reports as I was unable to reach my treasurer who had necessary documents needed to file. Sorry, I just don't really buy that excuse. And then division comments, reduced to $880. Committee has a history of late fees. I guess my question is, if they have a history of late fees, why are we reducing?
These are all audits. It's not the regular reports that are filed. So it's a correction of the regular report that was filed. So we're a bit more lenient on the audits that are done.
It's an audit that you all did of that account.
It's an audit of the reports that were due. Yes, basically.
And then based on each of those audits, you assess a certain fee or fine.
Right.
Okay, I guess I'm still wondering, so, for instance, okay, you did an audit of the pre-general one and found errors and
Right.
assessed a fee of $440.
Well, the fee was only assessed because of the fact that it was filed late. It doesn't have anything to do with the report.
The correction was fine.
Correction.
Yes, the correction was filed late.
Okay. Pre-general 1 was filed late, pre-general 2 was filed late, pre-primary 1 was filed late, spring audit was filed late. I mean, it just doesn't seem like they're getting the message.
Okay.
I'm all for a little leniency. I guess, can you tell me a little more why you're lenient?
Because it's not the original report.
Right.
It's just a correction of a mistake that was made on the original report.
Once the audit's done and they have to correct that, how long do they have to make that correction?
I believe it's 30 days.
And they were beyond 30 days, I
Yes,
guess,
they
in
were.
each of these. And can they make those corrections online? I mean, they
Yes,
log
they
onto
can.
their system?
Yes.
It's not something they have to bring here?
No, it's not.
Mail? I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm just, I wonder why we have these fines if we're always cutting them in half or... It especially annoys me when there are multiple, for lack of another term, offenses. Everybody can make a mistake once.
I'm just wondering, is this 4 things of a single event? So I'm seeing date received 8/19 for the audit. So was this catching up 4 audits, or was this one kind of leads to the other audits?
This was 4 different audits for 4 different reports.
But they were all received on the same day?
I think they were all issued at the same point,
Yes.
and then they were filed simultaneously.
Right. So they made 4 mistakes, see what I'm saying, in other words? But they corrected it on one day. And we're issuing them 4 fines.
And corrected them late.
Right, they corrected them late. But the date received on all of them, I look at the next one too, look at the one before it was received on 8/19. These all received on 9/4. With these 2, it seems like, it was 4 fines are in one thing that they corrected. That's my only.
Okay. I have a follow-up. Okay, I follow that logic. So if I flip ahead to citizens for Kirkland Hall, same thing. 3 audits, 3 fines, total $1,500. Division comments, denied. Committee has a history of non-compliance. I guess I'm trying to figure out, okay, they have a history of non-compliance, so we're going to deny their waiver.
Okay, Mr. Kirkland's history of noncompliance is he has had several campaign committees. And in each of those campaign committees, he's late filing the original report. He's been referred to the state prosecutor numerous times. I think he's had maybe 4 or 5 different committees. And in each of those committees, he's been referred to the state prosecutor. That's the difference.
That I agree with you there. Okay. And I'll vote to approve these as is, but I think we should get a little tougher
Okay.
going forward. My personal feeling.
We'll have Jared go into that in the future meeting.
Yeah, when we have time. I mean, it's not a pressing thing, so I don't want to hold things up. Thank you for the explanation.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, state the chair will entertain a motion to approve the waivers. So
Thank you.
moved. Second, all in favor?
Yes.
All approved. Next item. Approval of confidentiality requests.
COMAR 33.04.02.02 identifies individuals who may request to have their resident address and telephone numbers designated as confidential, as provided by regulations. The category of individuals who may request confidentiality are law enforcement personnel, persons being threatened, victims of or witnesses to a felony, and others due to safety or serious invasion of privacy.
And for the record, has your unit determined that in fact the persons that have requested this are in fact valid and authorized under the statute to receive it?
Yes, we have.
Any questions from anyone on the board or comments? Hearing none, chair will entertain a motion to approve the confidentiality request.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Approved. Okay, next item. Adoption of final regulation, subtitle 10, voting systems, ballot stubs. Just trying to
tell you
put a
that
little bit of,
This is the last.
This is the last time I have to say ballot stubs. So in your folder, you have 3 pieces of paper pertaining to ballot stubs. There's a memo dated December 26th. There's also a memo dated September 12th, and then a copy of the proposed or final regulations that were published in the Maryland Register. We did not receive any comments on these, so I just ask that you propose them for final.
Questions, comments? Hearing none. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the final adoption of regulations, subtitle 10, voting systems, ballot stubs.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
And now we have to promise to never use the phrase ballot
That's
stubs
awesome.
ever again.
I think we should have a new motion to have something to use ballot stubs just for Aaron.
Okay, item 9. Approval of proposed regulations, subtitle 16, provisional voting, and subtitle 17, early voting, and subtitle 19, same-day registration. Who's handling that one? Okay, Tracy.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. In front of you, you have a memorandum that was dated January 3rd. That I sent, not sent to you ahead of time. I would like to point out the first blurb under provisional voting. I inadvertently put the wrong citation there. It's 33-16-0101A. So these are sort of what we call cleanup regs. The items on here are things that have been suggested by the Division of State Documents editors after other regs that have already been finalized were submitted. So in Subtitle 16, Provisional Voting, this proposed amendment clarifies that when an election judge is determining if a voter is eligible to vote a regular ballot, that the restrictions in subsection 4 apply only to when an individual is attempting to use the same-day registration process during early voting, not the same-day address change process. That was not clarified beforehand, so we wanted to clarify that. The next one, Subtitle 17, Early Voting, Definitions, General Provisions. This proposed amendment repeals the reference that early voting is applicable to Baltimore City primary elections. Election Law, Article 8-201B and 8-301B specify that Baltimore City municipal primary and general elections are held on the same days as presidential and general elections. Therefore, the provision currently in Comar 3317-0283 is moot, is redundant and no longer necessary. And then the next one, Subtitle 19, same-day registration and address change, definitions, general provisions. This is the same provision that you approved in October. That was our emergency legislation. This is promulgating it in the regular process. So House Bill 286 of 2019 legislative session established the process for same-day registration on Election Day. It is the advice of Office of the Attorney General that the legislation requires same-day registration on Election Day for all elections, including special elections. This proposed amendment matches the emergency legislation that you approved in October and that the ALR committee approved, and that became effective on December 30th. Also, behind the memo is the status changes.
I have a question. On the actual statutory change, where the not the memorandum at the bottom, the .01 of the applicability to elections. What we're changing it to here is saying is available on election day. And we're deleting, I believe, for special primary and general elections, correct? Because in the brackets is the deletion.
You're on Subtitle 19?
Yeah, I mean, it would apply to, I mean.
We are, so the reason that same, we can't change one letter in a word, we have to make the full word.
Yeah, what I'm saying is
So-
the brackets are deleting things. Okay.
Correct.
That's just so that if I'm saying something that's wrong, then I would be very foolish in what I'm saying. So we're changing it to say is available on election day. And we're deleting what would have been is available for special primary and general elections. Correct? Based on what I'm reading here. And this is the reason I asked the question. Are we defining election day as covering all elections of any kind, of any type that are held? And if we're defining it that way somewhere, then that's what we've done. But I noticed that it was talking about special primary and general elections, so presumably just the word election day would then subsume those as well as any other election. It's a statutory construction, and that's what I'm asking about.
So if you read the whole sentence, it starts with the special primary and general election, same-day registration is available on
It's
election
available
day.
on their election day, on that election day in the
I
context.
believe
Okay, I'm
the
good.
wording recommendation of taking the special primary elections.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I agree with you, it's always redundant, they were repeating themselves.
Yes, the words were repeated.
Yep.
I have a question. We took out and address changes. So are address changes not allowed on election day of a special primary?
Correct.
Not allowed.
Ever.
Does it spell ever?
Ever.
Does it spell that out somewhere else in our
The
code?
bill was introduced last year, had address changes in it, and they deleted it for any election day.
Okay.
Other questions, thoughts? Okay. Hearing no other questions or thoughts,
Just stood straight.
Or move that. Yeah.
now, okay, so what we're dealing with here is the proposed regulations, subtitle 16, 17, and 19 memorandum, and the text is on the three items that are on the Chapter 01, Chapter 01, Chapter 01 definitions page, correct? And that's what we're dealing with right now.
Correct.
Okay, for clarity. So, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the proposed regulations for subtitles 16, 17, and 19 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passed. Okay.
Okay, now get the next one also. So the next one in front of you, you have a memorandum also dated January 3rd that says proposed regulations, subtitle 19. These are emergency changes to subtitle 19. At the October 2019 meeting, you approved emergency changes to subtitle 17 and 19 that allows for early voting at the special general election that will be running concurrently with the 2020 presidential election on April 28th. And that allows for same-day registration for the special primary and general elections. In reviewing this legislation, the analysts at ALR pointed out that COMAR 3319 does not explicitly state that same-day registration is available during early voting of special elections. We could presume that early voting is available during special election because they're occurring currently. However, it is the advice of the ALR committee to make this temporary change in the regulations. Going through the normal promulgation process would not allow this change to take effect in time for the April 28th election. Therefore, I'm submitting these proposed amended regulations via the emergency process.
Okay.
You also have the text behind the memo.
So in order to specify what was implied, you have to put it in the statute.
Correct.
This is
So
what it is.
the first set of emergency regulations allowed for the elections to run concurrently and for same-day registration for the special primary and the special general.
But at the time these came up, there was no special election. I mean, there was no,
They
weren't concurrent. There was no special election concurrent with that, so it was not clarified initially.
Correct. This was not pointed out to us until, I don't know.
After they
Right.
determined that they had to have a special election
Correct.
for larger companies.
Correct. So this particular provision would say same-day registration and the rest changes during early voting is permitted for the special general election that is to run concurrently with the regularly scheduled primary election on April 28th, 2020.
I thought that address changes were not allowed.
They're not allowed on election day.
During
They
early
are
voting.
during early voting.
This is specifically about early voting.
Only about early.
Yes.
Trying to keep up.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Out of curiosity, why would we permit or prohibit, you decided it, on early voting days but not on election? Either prohibit or permit, I mean, whichever way you choose to think about it. Why would we do that? I mean, if we're not allowing it under the one, why would we allow it under the other?
because the General
Okay,
Assembly
not a
made
date
that
answer.
decision.
I'm sorry?
The General Assembly made that decision. The reason they took it out of the Election Day bill.
You answered it the first sentence.
Well, I think as well, you are going to a specific precinct, not an early voting site. And so the early voting site would have greater ability to get you the ballot that you needed, especially if you moved in county. Whereas if you showed up on election day to your old precinct, you could only vote in part. It'd be a nightmare. It'd be very difficult.
Thank you, all of you. Takes a village to help, Chairman. Okay, with that in mind, any other comments or questions? The chair will, anyone care to submit a motion to approve proposed emergency regulations, subtitle 19, same-day registration?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Approved.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, approval of old bylaws of local boards of election.
You again.
Okay.
So we have two bylaws for approval. You have a memo in your packet that was sent to you, I believe it was also January 3rd, Wycomico County and Baltimore City. You also have in your packet a memo from Baltimore City explaining the one change that they did decide to make that did not go with the model bylaws. So I'll start with Baltimore City. Their bylaws went along with the model bylaws with the exception of section 2.2 under officers, subsection C, duties. Serving as the board's sole spokesperson for media inquiries. The model bylaws say that can be shared between the election director and the board president. Baltimore City wants to have one singular media point person. Don't have any problem with that. Wycomico County, their bylaws are this model, are identical to the model bylaws.
What, Wycomico?
Yes.
Question. Oh, please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The highlighted text, I mean, on the memo, didn't say,
The text that is italicized those are the things that the local boards have the option of. We have a couple different options.
okay, so it's their choice.
Correct.
We give them their choice in those
Correct.
aspects.
And what they have chosen is
So
all
whatever
they
they chose, it's within the context of the model bylaw.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Florence.
Oh, no problem. Baltimore City, why do they have an issue with the model bylaws in stating that two people can be the spokesperson, and other jurisdictions don't have an issue with that?
Well,
And why are we approving their exception if we,
that isn't a requirement by.
so why do we have in the model bylaws it was not a requirement?
Well, I think that our recommendation is that it's a shared duty so that if it's only, say, the board president, there could be a delay in response.
Right, one or the other is available to be the spokesperson.
Sure.
One's not available.
And the city has just chosen to make it be the election director, which,
And if they're not available, then there's no one speaking for them.
yeah, I don't know that we've had that be a problem in
Well,
the
that's not a
past.
question whether we've had
Okay.
it in the past. We don't know what issue may come up in the future, and it does present a problem. That's why I'm asking, why are they permitted to have just a single spokesperson? If something happens to that person, perhaps they're in an accident on the way to the press conference, so there's no one available. I mean, it's a backup. Why do they want to eliminate the backup plan?
Right, well, they have the ability to appoint a backup, but in your scenario, that wouldn't apply, right?
That's the way I see it.
Right.
because it's last minute. And the person that would do the backup is not available to do the backup because they were injured
Or the election director is injured and can't
Yeah.
appoint the designee.
Right.
In your scenario, that's not going to be forefront in his or her mind.
But it could be. I mean, we
Well, just reading the memorandum that was submitted from the city, in the second to the last paragraph, about halfway down, she says, to be sure, on August 15th, 2019, the president appointed the election director to serve as the city board spokesman for media inquiries. So it sounds like they have a de facto dual role, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. But I'm not defending this.
Well, along Mr. Fund's comments, generally, when you need a spokesperson, it's usually because there's an issue. Something happened. And the fact that you say, Oklahoma City says, we're only going to let the election director be the spokesperson, right? That's how I read it?
No, the president.
president of the board, local board.
Okay.
Who can then appoint the election director if they want
I
to.
was looking at it the other way around. Assuming if there's a problem, hopefully the election director is involved in trying to fix the problem and doesn't have to waste his or her time being the spokesperson.
I think Mr. Thumb's comments, though, are well taken in the sense that model bylaws, like a lot of standby legislation or emergency regulations, presume that something, that there's a need to ensure regularity as these things go through. Perhaps, I throw this out for discussion, perhaps any approval by us would be that while they may declare the president of the board a spokesperson who may, what's their words, determine or characterize and designate the person to serve as the contact, that it be changed to the effect of the president must, at some point in time immediately, designate a second person. And I think that would go to some of Mr. Flunt's comments. I'm not sure how we would write that, respond to them. Actually, it'd be up to them to write it. But the essence, I think, of Mr. Flunt's comments were, if the person doesn't do the designation, then you may have an unseemly process in the midst of whatever's going wrong.
Don't the bylaws, if I remember, because I agreed to them several times, have a provision that if the president isn't available, the vice president is in their stead. So in the event that there was an injury or other incapacitation of the president, or otherwise unavailable, the vice president would be the person who would fill in and either appoint somebody or be the spokesperson. My feeling is typically on this isn't a huge issue, I think, to us. I think that you defer to local boards when you can. That would be my proclivity. I think that, there could stand a point. I have never been in that point. We had a fantastic director and deputy director, and I can't speak more highly of them, working with them for 8 years, but I think that maybe some boards might feel like they were put in a situation where the executive director may not speak for the board, necessarily what the board thinks.
So you are correct. Subsection D, the next one, duties vice president. The vice president shall, number 2, perform the duties of the president. The president is unable to carry out the assigned duties until the new president can be elected or the president is able to resume full duties. So I can clarify with them this specific fact or this point, but if the president is unable to serve as the media spokesperson, that the vice president would assume those duties.
I guess my point is the board may want to formulate their own decision on how to talk to the media without, the ability to lose that ability if there was something that went sideways in an election. So I can understand the sentiment.
And I agree, we give local boards lots and lots of direction. We order them around all the time, and this seems like a minor thing to refuse to let them do it the way they want to do it. It's hard to persuade me.
I was just raising the question why they of 24, why they have one that doesn't want to go along with it.
It might be, Malcolm, that they thought about it and some others didn't, because if I thought about it now, if I was still on a local board, I might honestly want it that way. Never had a reason to want it that way, you know what I mean? But I can understand the sentiment of that word.
Nothing to vote on. I was just raising the question.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question because it does go against the model bylaws, which we've been imposing pretty routinely on all the other boards. And the question is, do we have a good reason? I mean, I think your questions were well taken.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Of course you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oftentimes, we are speaking of Baltimore City, and most of our news media outlets, especially TV stations, are in Baltimore, and often we are asked to
Drive to Baltimore.
Drive to Baltimore.
And I say no.
And we say no. And we often ask the election director of Baltimore City to perform that task for us. So that's just a comment that we rely on him often, or that director, to help us in spreading just general election news, how to register to vote, when's the deadline, those type of things.
Well, I think it comes down to the question, are we comfortable with making the exception for Baltimore City in this regard, or do we want to have them tweak the language to ensure that a designation is made? Whatever you designate is up to you, but that it's made. It's supposed to be up in the air. But how does the board feel about that? I'll look at Mr. Flynn.
I don't have any problem. I just want to know why.
You started all this. All right, then at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the Wycomico and Baltimore County.
Baltimore City.
Baltimore City, thank you. Baltimore City bylaws as submitted to the board with the changes. Moved. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Approved. All right. Next item is old business. Is there any old business we need to undertake? No? Okay. Is there any new business, and this will include the speakers, any new business to undertake? No? At this time, we'll move to the speakers that have asked to address the board, and this would be Laughlin and Mr. Boucher, in whatever order the two of you would like to present.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Allison McLaughlin. I'm the Deputy Election Director in Montgomery County, and I'm here today at the request of our Board President, Jim Shallett, and our Board Secretary, David Naiman, to request that Montgomery County be allowed to opt out of the poll book networking pilot. As you know, our board members do not always agree on everything, but on this topic, their position is bipartisan and unanimous. First, we do not have the funds in our budget to support this equipment. Second, our board members have concerns about the security of the system that we at the local level are not able to answer. And third, our board members are not convinced of the benefit to be gained from our participation to outweigh these concerns. The only data that we need before the absentee canvass is data on which previously registered voters checked in and were issued a provisional ballot on Election Day. Our board does not understand why same-day registration affects this existing process. As to the funding, yesterday, our county executive and county council leadership sent a letter to each of you stating that they do not support the funding and do not believe that it is an appropriate use of local dollars. If we are to use it in Montgomery County, they would ask that the system be paid for using state funds and that the new federal funds appropriated by Congress be used to ensure the security of the system. As to the security, as this is a state system designed and implemented at the state level, our county's Chief Information Security Officer has not been briefed on the technical details of the system. And if we are to use it, then we would ask both that our board members receive the same information that is shared with state board members, and that a full technical briefing be conducted with county information security professionals and with our IT staff. As to the benefit to be gained, our board has full confidence in the ability of our staff to meet the same deadlines that apply to smaller counties on election night, and in the ability of our staff to process a high volume of same-day registration transactions. Our election judge training begins next Friday, January 24th. We will be watching the other counties' implementation of this system with an eye toward participating if and when it is rolled out statewide. But for the 2020 cycle, we ask for your permission to withdraw from the pilot before we begin election judge training. I'm joined by Kathleen Boucher of our county's Office of Intergovernmental Relations, who can speak to the county's position, and I will then be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As Allison indicated and the chairman indicated, my name is Kathleen Boucher, and I'm a special assistant to the director of the Office of Intergovernmental Relations from Montgomery County. And I'm here to speak on behalf of our county executive, Mark Elridge, and our council, and to follow up on a letter that you received yesterday that was signed by our county executive, our council president, and vice president. Essentially, the request by Montgomery County is to reconsider your decision for a mandatory implementation of the wireless electronic full book networking. And I'd like to take a moment to highlight the concerns that the county expressed in its letter yesterday. And I would say, to follow up on Ms. McLaughlin's comments, that essentially these concerns will boil down to a difference of opinion as to the risks, the costs, and the benefits of rolling out the system now. And so here are a few of the main concerns of the county, most of which have been touched on by Ms. McLaughlin. The county, again, the county's developed these concerns based on the data that we've been able to gather, working with our county board of election, monitoring the issue, and it's based on our available information. The county believes that the system is unnecessary at this time. We have been advised by the Montgomery County Board of Elections that there has not essentially been a challenge with uploading the data from the electronic poll books by the 3 a.m. deadline. We've received no information from the county board or from monitoring proceedings that would suggest that there would be a different outcome in the 2020 election cycle. And our county board assures us that they believe that using the traditional provisional ballot system will work well, and our poll workers and staff are ready to do that. In terms of the risks, the county has a different evaluation of risks, and part of that may be uncertainty in terms of information we do not have, that you may have, we don't know. But right now, the potential vulnerability to cybersecurity threats in terms of voter integrity and also personal identifying information concerns the county greatly. In terms of cybersecurity, there's also just an understanding that differences between wireless signals and landline, and fully understanding the risks there and making sure that the system is secure. Also, site security. A system like this is going to require more skilled staff and more monitoring and human involvement. And in terms of time to train people, time to roll this out, and human potential for mistakes or potential for dealing with challenges, we have a deep concern. The county also has a concern in terms of risk of if the system fails. What happens? There will be, we understand, backup processes. We've been told that possibly one backup system would be provisional ballots, another might be the old school paper poll book as a backup. But there's a lack of clarity as to what would the backup system be, and a belief that no matter what it is, it will involve delay and impact the length of lines and potentially long lines on election day. The county, based on its evaluation of the risks and the costs and the benefits, believes it's inappropriate to use county funds for this purpose. The costs have been estimated to be about $365,000, plus the cost of technicians and poll workers, extra poll workers. And again, the county has its different evaluation than the state board has on risks, costs, benefits, and does not believe it's appropriate to spend county funds for this purpose. So I thank you for listening. I will say one idea that I was thinking about as Allison spoke was, one benefit of the opt-out system that Allison suggested was the ability to do an evaluation after the 2020 cycle and compare how did it work for the counties in the pilot, how did it work for counties that opted out. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. It's a pleasure to be here and happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions?
The question is, Ms. McLaughlin, you gave, I believe, 3 reasons why you opposed to it. One was cost, and you haven't been involved in the analysis of working the system and what it entails. You said the system was imposed on you and there was nobody from the local board that was involved in looking at the system and the risk involved. Is that correct?
Well, it is a state system. The cost, the security concerns that Kathleen voiced in more of a detailed manner, and then weighing against that the benefit to be gained by us participating versus what the cost would be if we were to be allowed to opt out.
Yeah. Also, I thought you indicated that you weren't involved in that. My question, I guess, is if members of the board or your staff were involved in the analysis and looking at it, would you still be opposed to it?
Well, I think at this point, it's not merely our board, it's also our county executive and our county council. So they would want to make sure that our chief information security officer for the county had more information on how the system is, on the actual.
Well, whoever was involved, if they were involved in looking at the process and they were satisfied with the security and everything, would you still be opposed to it based upon the cost?
The request from our board, since we're going to start poll worker training next Friday, would be for you to allow us to opt out now so that we can train our poll workers accordingly. Whatever information we obtain subsequently, that certainly may shift the position of the county and the position of our board over time.
Okay, thank you. If I could, and just ask all that. Ms. Thompson, would you like to make any comment about upcoming briefings?
Sure. So
This is for the information of the board as well. Not everybody heard this.
So next Thursday morning, we're fortunate that Cradlepoint, who is the vendor from whom we purchased the routers, is going to be in town, and so we have scheduled a technical briefing for the 6 local boards, and offered sort of 3 seats per jurisdiction, whatever combination of local board and county IT is appropriate, and so that will be Thursday morning, a week from today in the morning.
And how remember that, and now, PJ, I'm sorry, in case you were touching on the kind of information I just wanted to
Yes and no. Couple quick questions. How many times has Montgomery County not met the 3 a.m. deadline?
And I've tried to go back and find logs to go back over time and find that as far as I can. What I know of, I know that in the 2016 primary, when we first rolled out the voting system, we had poll workers who did not fully understand what was to be left in those black carts that they received for the first time and what was not. And so we had a significant problem with election judges locking up their poll books in the black carts. I know I was personally involved on Wednesday in going out and getting those poll books out of black carts on Wednesday morning after that election. To my knowledge, in the 2016 general and in the 2018 primary in general, we had no particular difficulty getting that information uploaded. I believe that we were not the last county to get our information uploaded.
PJ.
Yep.
So this is a little awkward because, so first of all, the deadline isn't 3 o'clock. That is the last step of a multi-hour process. So we get the log files. There's a lot of analysis that happens here before it gets down this path to end up at that 3 o'clock last check and then into MD voters shortly thereafter. So the deadline is not 3 a.m. It's much earlier, 11-ish, 10:30, 11-ish, something like that. And Montgomery County does not consistently make that. They didn't in the 2018 general election. And it is, let me be very clear, this is not a reflection on Montgomery County election administration. It's a function of size, of travel time, of number of poll books. And that's why it's the 6 largest counties, because they all face the same challenge of more precincts, more poll books, larger geography, maybe Baltimore City accepted because they're not so huge in size, but they're huge in number of precincts. And so Montgomery County does not generally meet that 10:30, 11-ish time because of its size. I want to be very clear, it's not a reflection of any administration issue at all. But that 3 o'clock deadline is not the deadline. It's the last part of an automated process that starts hours earlier.
And what drives those times and deadlines?
I'll let Shafiq address that.
Yeah, so without getting into too far in the weeds, there's a lot of different processes that have to be completed, as Nikki mentioned, before we get to that 3 a.m. deadline. There's not only the processing and receiving of the log files from the local boards, but there are also some external handshakes with other vendors that have to take place as well, so that we can actually compile that data and have it ready for the import into MD voters. And so those are hard set windows, so it's not something as simple as, oh, well, we can try to shift the time frame, because now you are in essence shutting down MD voters for an extended period of time. So then it rolls into Wednesday and even into possibly Thursday. So this is not something that we're just trying to push. This is a requirement based on the current layout of how we do things with the log files and the different variables associated with it.
Does Montgomery County have a new CIO?
We do. We just have a.
We didn't as of a couple months ago.
We actually had our prior director there for. I'm not sure when he was. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Kind of around Mako. So.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, right. You talked to him there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We do, and I must say our county IT, our Department of Technology Services, is very concerned. They do not have the information they need to be confident in any way, that they understand the system and provide the support they need to. Our county DTS provides significant support to the board, and we simply don't have the information that leads to any level of confidence.
Let me preface with I have the utmost respect for SBE folks that handle the integrity and security of our systems. But I'm not allowed to say, I know a very large entity last week using a WAN who had a significant security breach. I can't go into any details. And I sit here, I feel like we're being, to meet certain deadlines, we're exposing ourselves to possible risk. And like along the lines of, risk-benefit, analysis, I'm beginning to be very uncomfortable about the potential risks for what? The benefit of getting the data uploaded in a certain amount of time to people. not sure it's worth the risk. I don't know, are we so far down the road on this? We can't turn back?
So, a couple things. So, in closed session, we are providing all of you, I know we've talked about in closed session before, but a more technical, without being technical, briefing on this. And so, getting the data in has a consequence to preparing for the canvass the next day. Thursday absentee canvass. That's what that data is.
And that canvass the next day is driven by state law?
It says it has to start at 10 o'clock on the Thursday after the election. And so that's what that data helps inform decisions that are before the board on that Thursday. And so our team here has worked tirelessly evaluating solutions and coming up with a network that is secure and has been tested and has capacity to handle this. And while I respect everybody's concerns, absolutely, and that's our team has been going through that. Well, what if this? What if this? And they've thought through those scenarios to come up with this solution. The answer to your last question is, have we gone too far? We've purchased the routers. Most of them are in state. There's another shipment coming, but they're here. And so there is, we have started the process. The 3 counties in the 7th Congressional District have started training their poll workers on using this router for the February 4th election. And that's now part of the setup. The poll book check-in process is separate from this, and they're being trained on that too. But they are being trained on the setup for the February 4th election.
And this is a pilot program in the 6th largest county, right?
I'm not sure we've been calling it a pilot, but it is for the 6th largest because, as I said earlier, those are the counties that have the greater logistics to get those files back to their office to get loaded to then get them to us to kick off that overnight process.
Is it the plan that eventually all 24 jurisdictions?
I wouldn't say it's a plan. I think we want to go through the primary, see how it works. Are we getting enough data throughout the day that that overnight process can run and be ready for Wednesday morning? If that's working, then we may not need to expand it. There's been no decision making. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that Shafiq alluded to, or said this in his administrative report, that these routers that we're buying, we're looking to swap out for the election, the early voting network, because those routers are end of life, is what he said. And to keep in mind that we've had this network in place since every election starting in 2010. It's the early voting network. Admittedly, it's less sites than it is on election day. But the concept and the technology, academic technology, not the specifics, but we've been doing successfully in 2010, 12, 14, 16, and 18. And now we're taking that and applying it to election day.
So where do we stand on this issue? Question for us, can Montgomery County opt out? Question for us?
There's no question before us. The speakers are speakers. I guess declined as it were. So there's no agenda item relating to this. Except in the sense of the closed meeting, we have an agenda item to go into more detail on this. Again, briefing in that regard.
Some other questions through the closed.
understand.
Is there any update on the use of federal funds?
So we have calls next week with the United States Election Assistance Commission, which is the entity that gives us the money. So we're waiting to get the paperwork and those calls. And we've asked the Department of Budget Management, who ultimately is the first step in that process, whether they will allow us to use those federal funds to replace our request for special funds, and we don't have an answer on that yet. They're aware of the need for it to be answered quickly, because that is our desire, is to use federal funds to pay for this, but it's not a decision that is ours to make.
Thank you. Anyone?
Yes, Ms. Boucher opened her remarks by saying that she was here to ask the State Board to reconsider our decision. If by the State Board you mean the 5-member bipartisan oversight board, I want to be clear, this was not our decision. We didn't know anything about this, and we didn't know for months and months and months. You at the local board know more than we do. And with the work that you mentioned you've done with the county trying to collect data, that's even more that you know that we don't know. The timeline on this is extraordinary. Same-day registration was not a surprise to anybody. It was a long time coming. The first legislation passed the General Assembly in 2018, 2 years ago. I have no idea when staff realized that there was going to be a problem with transmitting the data, but whenever they realized there was going to be a problem with transmitting the data, the State Oversight Board should have been briefed, and they never were. From 2018 on, the first date I know of is February 21, 2019. Local boards were briefed. We were not. Within a week, the amazing organization Mayo convened a meeting, wrote down all of their concerns, and sent a letter to the state administrator. That letter was dated March 1. We never saw it. We had a meeting in March. The State Board was not briefed. We had a meeting again in April. We were still not briefed. We had a meeting in May. We were not briefed. We had a meeting in June. We were not briefed. We had a meeting in July. We were not briefed. We had a meeting in August, and we still were not briefed. Finally, in September, after information about this new top-level policy started to leak out, we were given a briefing. It was an oral briefing. We were allowed to ask questions. We've never seen any data of any sort. We've never seen any analysis of any sort. I think that's the wrong way to operate. We are here to provide oversight, and we didn't do it in this situation. We can't reverse our decision because we didn't make this decision, and there's no issue before us today.
You mentioned my name, and so let me just clarify. I apologize if I use the wrong terminology, but what you've just described in terms of the process is part of why our county is so concerned. Trying to follow the bouncing ball, trying to get the information in the timeline that's been laid out has been impossible.
I share your frustration, and part of the confusion is because the agency is called the State Board, and the 5-member Oversight Board is called the State Board. So it's very confusing at times to know who you're talking about. If you look at the Maryland Code early on, the first thing the lawmakers did was they created a 5-member bipartisan oversight board. And the second thing they did, I think it's 2102, is they vested the bipartisan oversight board with broad authority. Authority to supervise elections, authority to direct local boards. And we also have the power to delegate, obviously, because we need to delegate a lot of things. And other board members who have preceded me have delegated many things, but not top-level policy, especially one like this. This is controversial. It's multi-million-dollar. It's a top-level policy, and it should have come before us early on. And these questions that you're asking, I wish I could answer. I have my own questions. I wanted to know about when the information comes in on election night, And I wanted to know about the speeds of uploading, and I wanted to know what assumptions we were making about same-day registration, how that was going to affect the speed. I don't know any of that. And one of the problems is the relationship between the board and the staff, because if we had been briefed early on, then I would ask questions, the staff would get data, and staff's objective would be to persuade me, because I've got to make a decision, and they want to show me what I need, what I'm asking for, and persuade me. But by keeping us in the dark until it was way too late to turn this around, now when I ask questions, what necessarily comes back at me is defense, because I'm not asking about a prospective policy. I'm asking about a policy that's already been implemented. So the only thing staff can do is defend it. And that's not a good relationship. So I really wish this had been done differently and that we could answer your questions, but we can't. At least I can't. And when I tried to ask about alternatives in the September board meeting, I tried to ask about alternatives that have been considered, and I was aggressively shut down. And that's part of the defensiveness. Because I don't know, could the deadlines be changed by legislators to make it, because they wanted same-day registration, it's understandable that there would be some price to pay. Well, maybe they have to just agree to have the data come in later. But I can't tell you one thing about any alternative that's ever been seriously considered.
Ms. Howells, may I rephrase my question, my request then? I guess our request on behalf of the county would be that the State Board of Elections assert its oversight authority and allow this system not to be implemented.
No, I was wondering if you were going to.
I wish I could answer questions like that, but there's so much more I'd like to know. But having been in the dark for as long as I was, and one single briefing and it's all.
I think that it's not the first time Montgomery County has made a request of the 5-member board.
Pardon me?
It's not the first time Montgomery County has made a request of the 5-member board. We take all of it seriously. Everybody who sits up here does. Everybody who sits in this room does, for that matter. You've heard concerns by board members, and I think this is something that we, as a 5-member board, are going to have to consider, and we'll see where this takes us. But I wouldn't make any commitment at all. Certainly wouldn't be authorized to do so. But I think that would be a reasonable statement to you at this moment. You've made your statement. You've heard some responses. You can read into them as you wish. And but I assure you, the state board, the 5-member board, as well as the rest of the agencies, takes their responsibility seriously.
Thank you very much for listening and your comments. And if the county, or I'm sure Allison would speak the same, if we can help you in any way, understand our concerns, if we need more information, we'd be happy to give that to you. We'd be happy to pull down our DPS director. We'd be happy to pull in whoever you need if you would like to further understand our concerns.
We appreciate your courtesy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I...
Sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Kathy?
Absolutely.
Can you... I read the letter from county executive and letter from Mr. Shalik, and it talks about vulnerabilities. Can you have your, what do you call them, DPS?
Yes.
Have him or her send a list of specific technical concerns about the network?
Absolutely, but I will share with you, absolutely, but I will share with you that one of their dilemmas will be, they might be able to speak in general terms, but because they have not been briefed and given the kind of information they need, they may not be able to give you all the information that will be appropriate, but I will absolutely take that request back.
Chairman just said, yeah, maybe Thursday might shed some light on it.
That'll be a technical briefing.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so maybe after that briefing,
See how that briefing goes.
okay, I'll take that request back, I'd be happy to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
anything further by the members of the board? Okay, with that, next item is disclosure of campaign contributions. Any disclosures?
None?
$500 to Friends of Bill Ferguson. And $500 to Friends of Adrian Jones.
And I'm assuming you want to be on the record that they were given before the study session.
Yes, please. Actually, December 5th. And I apologize, I was not able to attend the December meeting. That's why I did not report them. If the minutes will reflect, this is the first meeting I've been to since that event.
Was it December 5th for both times?
Yes.
Minutes
Good
will
point,
reflect.
well said. And
Thank you.
I regret that I don't have any donations to it, but I'll try and fix that. Okay, next item is scheduling the next meeting. All right. January, February. So we would be normally looking at February 20th, I believe.
I think historically you do the 4th.
24th?
Yeah,
I think we
legislative
moved
was
it up
the
because
fourth
of
Thursdays.
a legislative hearing next week.
Oh, okay, so we will be.
I don't know, but
So,
27.
it's up to you.
27th?
Regulations say we do the fourth
I
Thursday.
showed it to 27.
Okay, okay. Pardon? I mean, I'm open to any date, so.
27th is what I show.
Yeah,
We normally do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's-
Is it the 4th? Oh, it is the 4th.
that's
okay.
the fourth Thursday.
It is, indeed.
That works for me.
I'll do my best. I have no control over the hearing.
Thursday the 27th.
I will try and make that work at 2 o'clock.
Okay. So we set the meeting then for 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 27th of February. Okay. Now, at this point, for the information of anybody who's kind of left, this is going to be the end of the open meeting. There's not going to be any more work in the open for the remainder of the afternoon. So once we adjourn the open meeting, we will not reconvene in open meeting again. So, at this time, the board will now consider whether to meet in closed session 2. First, discuss compensation of 2 individuals over whom the state board has jurisdiction as permitted by section 3305B1 of the general provisions article. 2, consult with counsel to obtain legal advice and consult with staff on pending litigation as permitted by section 3305B7 and 8 of the general provisions article. Meeting in closed session will allow the members of the board to seek and obtain legal advice with board counsel without waiver of the attorney-client privilege. 3, discuss network architecture and security of election network as permitted by section 3305B15 of the general provisions article. May I have a motion to meet in closed session?
So moved.
Moved, second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? The board will move into, motion to pass, the board meets closed session in accordance with exemptions B1, B7, B8, and B15 of section 3305 of the Open Meetings Act. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? The board will now adjourn the open meeting and move into closed session.
And we're going to meet in the IT conference room over there.
Okay. You get it?